The Department of Defense violated the law and my rights, and I have evidence pointing to them committing the same violations against potentially thousands of other reservists and National Guard service members. They are covering up their violations. The MSPB administrative judge has done nothing. Is the DoD immune to military anti-discrimination and retaliation laws? I am Jeremy Cantrell, and I have served my country in and out of uniform for nearly 20 years. I've served in the Air Force as a nuclear weapons launch officer, at the White House in the Office of Presidential Correspondence, and at U.S. embassies in Uzbekistan, Poland, Mozambique, and more. Despite my faithful service, the Department of Defense violated the law and my rights, and I have evidence pointing to them committing the same violations against potentially thousands of other reservists and National Guard service members. Based on what I've learned, the DoD is intentionally applying the wrong entitlement to reservists and National Guard service members on active duty overseas. The specific entitlement deals with housing and is resulting in service members being shortchanged since they are provided a rate known as BAH2, and that is only supposed to be provided for deployments under 30 days, that does not factor in all costs. This makes a difference since it can result in the service members paying thousands of dollars out of pocket, depending on their length of their time in service. Career active duty receives storage of vehicles and household goods when they go overseas. When I asked about these, I was denied. I made countless trips, phone calls, and emails with the Military Pay Office, trying to get these issues corrected. For months, it was an endless back and forth with no resolution. I was forced to turn to the Inspector General's office, but incredibly, they did nothing. Only weeks after the Inspector General's office closed my case and the Pay Office refused to make corrections, my Department of Defense civilian employer pushed me out of my civilian job, even though I invoked my rights under the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. That law mandates they had to hold my job for up to 5 years by law due to my military service. In reality, I was only on duty for barely a year, and then they pushed me out. For the remainder of my time on active duty, I was denied civilian benefits like military leave, and also had money involuntarily taken out of my military paycheck. In my next civilian job at the U.S. Embassy in Poland, the one I'm currently fighting for, I faced more retaliation and financial discrimination tied to my short-term military orders. I tried in vain for years to get corrections, and I only got the runaround, or brick walls within the DoD. So I was forced to turn to more formal channels for help. I went to yet another Inspector General's office, the Department of Labor, and even the Federal Labor Relations Authority. They merely performed investigative theater, while the serious issues I raised remained deliberately unaddressed. Eventually, I was forced to turn to an independent investigative agency created by Congress to uphold federal laws and employee rights, the Office of Special Counsel. After I started sharing evidence of the DoD's widespread violations potentially impacting thousands of others, the DoD doubled down and increased their retaliation. The DoD restricted me from the office, and the OSC closed my case despite me outlining more abuse and providing more evidence. Within days of that closure, the Department of Defense stopped my pay and benefits. Simultaneously, they ramped up the pressure by harassing my wife with unwelcome phone calls and emails. Now look, I did everything right. I identified unlawful activity by my employer and worked in good faith to get it corrected. I turned to the last option I had, the Merit Systems Protection Board, MSPB, an entity designed to protect the integrity of the federal civilian employee system. I filed my complaint, but after they acknowledged it, the MSPB administrative judge has done nothing. Despite their own handbook setting 120 days as a standard for resolving cases, and despite me clearly identifying the violations and the financial harm, it has been over 200 days with still no jurisdiction. All I have is a case number, a slow march toward bankruptcy, and the collapse of both my military and civilian careers that I spent years building up in service to my country. I'm in an impossible situation, and what makes this all the more devastating is that my employer has placed my 2 small children in this situation as well. Only days before they were supposed to start school, the DoD withdrew funding they were obligated to pay, resulting in the involuntary withdrawal of my children from school. Now look, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, which includes supporting the laws made under it. I could not simply walk away when they chose to double down on their lawbreaking. And believing that it's supposed to be resolved within 120 days, I kept the faith. My family and I have had to use our savings just to survive while we wait for the MSPB to give me my day in court. A day in court that should have happened months ago. We are now down to our last few weeks of funds, so I'm forced to appeal and appeal publicly. First, I appealed to my Congress members, Congressman Thompson, Senator Wicker, Senator Hyde-Smith. I respectfully urge you to demand the Department of Defense answer the following questions. First, does the DoD continue to pay a lower housing rate to Reserve and National Guard service members on active duty compared with their career active duty counterparts? Second, does the DoD continue to deny benefits such as storage costs for Reserve and National Guard service members on active duty while providing those very same benefits to career active duty? Third, did the DoD take away federal civilian benefits such as living quarters allowance only for me when I went on temporary military active duty orders? Or is this a widespread unlawful practice against all DoD federal civilian employees that go on such orders? Fourth, does the DoD view it as acceptable to push out a civilian from his or her job simply because his or her employer views active duty service as inconvenient to them? Fifth, is the DoD immune to military anti-discrimination and retaliation laws? For the MSPB and Judge Brian Boland, I respectfully ask, what are you waiting for? Why is my case still waiting for jurisdiction when your agency's very own guidelines state my case should have been resolved months ago? And finally, I appeal to everyone interested in helping to do one or both of the following. First, share this video, especially with those serving in the National Guard and Reserves, since I believe there are many more out there that don't even realize what's happening. Second, donate. If you are able, I'd be grateful for any donations you could provide. I aim to hold the Department of Defense accountable and get access to the documents and testimony that would not only bring justice for me, but would also hopefully get justice for other service members that have faced or are facing the same abuse as I am. One is through a GoFundMe campaign set up by a family member, and the other is through digital currency donations. I need all the help I can get. I appreciate your time and any support you can provide. Thanks.